Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, brought to you by the Oswego Alumni Association and the Gold Graduates of the Last Decade program with support from the Fund for Oswego. My name is Stephanie Lamb, and I am Senior Associate Alumni Director for SUNY Oswego, and I'm honored to introduce today's alumni host, Zach Pele, class of 2012. Zach graduated from Oswego with his bachelor's in mathematics education before going on to earn his master's in middle childhood and adolescent math education in 2013 from the University of Rochester. Since graduating, Zach has served as a math teacher for Mount Morris and Leroy Central School Districts in the Western New York area before relocating to Indianapolis, Indiana in 2017. Zach now teaches math at Heron High School in Indianapolis, and in 2019, he earned his educational specialist degree in educational leadership at Indiana Wesleyan University. Zach has continued to stay involved with his alma mater, where he and his wife, Amy, also a class of 2012 SUNY Oswego grad, both serve as dedicated members of the Graduates of the Last Decade Leadership Council. A wonderful demonstration of success and achievement in education, Zach will surely provide you with some great information and advice today. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Zach.
Thanks, Stephanie, and thanks for everyone out there listening in on this today. I know that as teachers, we often don't have time always to get to an actual meeting, and so if you can view this at your own leisure, that makes it a little more purposeful for you. This presentation is going to be meant for all of my new teachers going through their teacher preparation program and are aspiring to be a teacher, or for you're just starting out of the gate and you're in your first couple of years. So I'm just going to kind of go through what I think that I have found valuable over the years. It's sort of a mishmash of things, and basically, again, it's just my top tips for you all as you join the education world. A little bit more about my background. I am originally from Saratoga Springs, New York. As Stephanie mentioned, I graduated from SUNY Oswego, my bachelor's in adolescent math education. I student taught at Phoenix High School and Baldwinsville Middle School nearby. Baldwin School was teaching grade 8 math as well, and at Phoenix I was teaching trigonometry at the time. I also served as a math tutor at the Office of Learning Services at SUNY Oswego. I was a teaching assistant for a semester. For 5 different summers, I was a math instructor for the Educational Opportunity Program on campus. And I've also been a presenter at AMPNIS, Association of Mathematics Teachers of New York State. After I graduated, I didn't really want to take time off before I earned my master's, so I jumped right into my grad program at the University of Rochester. It was a 1-year program. During that time, I was a substitute teacher at several of the school districts listed to really kind of get a feel for the Rochester area and the schools and the educational opportunities that they were offering. I was also a graduate assistant for the Rochester Community Center for Leadership, as well as for residential life. During that time, I was also able to present once again at the AMPNIS conference on my master's thesis, which was on formative assessment practices, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And then near the end of that period, I was also a long-term sub at Sodus Middle School. And so that maternity leave was about a 2-month, I believe, teaching position that really was a nice segue into my full-time job. After that, I was fortunate enough to teach at Mount Morris High School for 3 different years. Mount Morris is about a 45-minute commute down 390 outside of Rochester, so it's in the outer ring of Rochester. I was able to teach almost every course in Mount Morris, and I was also able to really take on a lot of different roles. So I was the varsity track and field coach for 3 years. I advised the chess club. I was a junior class advisor, and we took 34 students to Walt Disney World. So that was a really great experience. I also took on some things that no one else really wanted to, and I did the daily announcements every day. I was a committee member for 3 different committees. And then, because of doing all of these different things and being involved, I earned the Golden Apple Teacher of the Year award for 2 years in a row, as well as earning my tenure. And so I think that that's a really important thing to kind of note is as we get into our first couple of years of teaching, we really want to get involved and really showcase what we can do. From there, I went to Leroy High School, a little bit shorter of a drive, also trying to get just a different educational perspective. Every school district operates differently, and so I wanted to get that experience in another school district so that I didn't feel like I was in my own little world in Mount Morris. At Leroy, I taught pre-calculus and then an Algebra 1 extension course. I was the varsity indoor track and field coach, which led us to a Section 5 championship, as well as advising again for the freshman class. From there, we moved out to what we would call the breadbasket of America. And I've been working at Heron High School for 2 different years now, teaching, advising, supervising, working over the summer. Heron High School is a charter school, so that was a completely different experience. I'd be happy to talk about that a little bit more if anyone was interested in that. There was a lot of extra duties and things that we were assigned and expected to do, and so it's just a different educational world when you have a free choice school and students can come or they can go at any time. I also had the opportunity to go to Indiana Wesleyan University and earn my school district leadership degree, as well as being certified as a school district leader, and really dove into a lot of just different topics that you don't normally catch in a normal teacher preparation program, such as personnel and facilities and politics and law and things like that. So that was just a really, really great experience. Other interesting things in my life, as Stephanie mentioned, I am married to an Oswego alum. We own a house in Broad Ripple in Indianapolis. Our Yorkie Poo is about a year old, and we love just cycling and cooking and just really being outside. And so that just to give you a little idea about us. So as we think about getting a job, you really have to apply anywhere and everywhere. When I was looking in Rochester, I was actually applying all over New York State at the time. I probably put out about 100 applications. So you really have to be resilient and persistent in your job search. Plus, the more times you can go through the interview process, the better. Their questions become very similar, and so you can really fine-tune your answers. And then you just really have to be patient. I got hired, I think, in Mount Morris in the middle of August, right? And so the school year starting up in September, it was a last-minute hire. So if you're just patient, opportunities will come your way. There are some jobs that I listed here for you, and there's another job board for anyone that was interested in being a future administrator. It's also important to get really great letters of recommendations. And so you want to make sure that you're getting them from the right people and making sure they're not out of date. Most employers don't want to see letters of rec that are more than a year or 2 old. They want something that is current. And so when they reach out and they contact these people, it is pretty relevant. Some jobs might require you or not require to put together a portfolio. I think that it's a great way for you to showcase your work, whether that's pictures or art or exemplar lessons. Your resume and cover letter should be wordsmithed by others, and I think that it's important. I thought that my resume was perfect, and I had a couple people look at it, and they were able to fine-tune it a little bit, and I think it came out really, really nice in the end. Some colleges will offer that service to you free of charge, and so I would take advantage of that. And again, like I said, New York is a very tight teaching market, so don't be constrained to your home or where you want to be. Just be open to any possibilities that are out there. And again, like I said, with the charter school, just be careful with non-traditional schools, private schools. they often ask for quite a few things that are just expected of you and that are not compensated. And so, just making sure that when you're going through your contract that you're really reading the fine. Here are some popular interview questions that I've come across. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Why do you want to work here? Why are you the best candidate? This is another popular one. Tell me a time when a lesson didn't go well, and then what did you do in response to that? What are your strengths and weaknesses? And those questions are generally tough because you don't really want to say what your weaknesses are, but it's always good to counter that with a strength or your plan to kind of work on that weakness. A lot of situational questions. What would you do if a student threw a chair or doesn't do their homework and things like that? And things like that, you kind of have to just think on your feet. And then how do you communicate with parents? Since this is a YouTube video, you're more than welcome. There's going to be some questions that I'm going to pose out here. You're more than welcome to respond to these in the thread of the YouTube channel. But if you have come across any other interview questions that you thought were unique, you can definitely post that. I was asked one time, what book am I reading right now? What TV show am I watching? So, I mean, they can really ask you literally anything under the sun. Just a quick overview of what a hiring process generally looks like. Job description is posted. They will assemble a hiring committee. Typically, it is content teachers, the principal, and director of curriculum instruction if there's a director at that school. It's usually a variety of teachers. Sometimes like a department chair will be on there, or the director of special education. So it's generally a nice mix. There'll be screening interviews. Most of the time, it's just a quick phone call just to hear a little bit about yourself. And from there, if you move on to another round, it's usually an in-person interview with those people. Sometimes you have to write and do a writing sample. I've had to write like an email to parents one time. You should always have a few questions ready for them. At the end of every interview, they say, okay, do you have any questions for us? So just make sure you have something that you can say at the end. For example, what kind of technology is the district using, or what kind of PBIS is being used, things like that. From there, the committee and principal will recommend semifinalists to the superintendent, and that's usually just a more informal conversation. It's usually about 2 or 3 people, so the superintendent can kind of vet you out a little bit and see kind of who you are as an educator. And then they choose a finalist, and hopefully you have a job. If you have any unique interview experiences, again, it'd be great for you to post that. So once you land a job, it's overwhelming. So you will enjoy new teacher training, NTO, sometimes they call it, new teacher orientation. It's usually a very big overload of information, usually lasting anywhere from 3 to 5 days, from 8 to 5. You'll go to school, they'll give you lunch, you'll learn about their mentoring program if they have one of those. It'll roll into professional development with returning teachers. You can set up your classroom. It's very, very overwhelming. It's like drinking water from a garden hose. And then you'll really dive into understanding your APPR, which is basically how to evaluate teachers. Typically, it is formal observations where you meet with the principal beforehand, you do your lesson, they observe you, and then you have a post-conference where you reflect on it. Informal observations where they come in whenever. And then also that goes into your APPR is any state assessment data or local assessment data, such as the Regents exams or things like that. Both schools in New York are using the Danielson rubric, and if you haven't heard of that, you can look it up online. It's just basically a big rubric where they can identify evidence for where you are in your teaching. So just keep in the forefront of planning your formal observations. One of the biggest things that schools are looking for teachers to do is to build systems, particularly classroom management. So students should be understanding what the class procedures are, how do they use the bathroom? Do they raise their hand, sign out? What is your policy for technology? Expectations for your collaboration and group work? How do we end the class? And then thinking about sort of how are you going to deal with behavioral or discipline systems. Proximity is a great one where you get close to them. Warnings, maybe a strike system for the younger folks, 1, 2, 3 thing. And really what it comes down to is the research says 3 to 33. And what that means is if you establish 3 really good weeks of classroom management and systems, then you're going to get 33 good weeks of instruction. So really in that first week, like you're really just building the culture of that room, maybe teaching a little bit, and then you kind of can dive in from there. But it's really important to really make sure you establish your expectations. And then it's okay to write up students or a referral for inappropriate behavior. I found that with some students, that's an effective way to fix that behavior, and it really starts those corrective conversations. There's a lot out there on classroom management, so I just encourage you to go through and seek those out for what works for you. You'll end up definitely working very closely with the people that are in your same content, or if you're at the elementary level in the same grade level as you. And so you will end up sharing content. You'll be seeing them in department meetings. Don't forget that some people really think that they are the center of the school, and so just kind of keeping that in the back of your mind. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel. Like I said, many lessons and plans have been developed. Many schools already have curriculum and curriculum maps ready to go, and so you can tweak those. But I wouldn't say try and go back and try and do everything from scratch. For math, I listed some resources that we have, such as Engage New York, JMAP, CUDA, and Khan Academy. And for every curriculum, there's just tons of resources out there. And I've inherited like an entire curriculum before. All you have to do is ask your principal or your department chair, and they will, provide those for you. And then just like a last note, I've generally discovered a close friend at each school to get advice or to carpool with, and just like have those formal conversations to kind of figure out the nuts and bolts of the school that they don't really tell you in your new teacher orientation. So finding a buddy that you can latch onto and really just vet ideas and get advice from. It's nice to kind of have someone to talk to at school about school. Another big thing is just planning. And so one of the toughest parts about teaching is having a plan. We really want a day-by-day schedule set in stone. But as we know, there's lots of interruptions. There's delays, there's snow days, there's assemblies, there's conferences. And so, or maybe a lesson took longer or shorter than you initially thought. I typically stick with a 2-week evolving plan, and I just kind of update it every Friday. You can buy yourself a fancy planner, or I just print off a paper calendar and just kind of write in what my lessons are, what important dates are on there, things like that. And then just having an updated curriculum map is important. Most schools require that anyway, but it really helps you when you come back the following year, you have something to look at from the previous year. And if anyone has any questions about curriculum maps, I'd be more than happy to talk through that. Another hot topic in education is data-driven instruction. Administrators always want teachers to be collecting data, and so you can use different collection tools such as whatever grade book you have, or Scantrons, or anything like that. Some schools like mine receive grants for this, so that's why it's a big push. But I just think that it's really important anyway, because your instruction should be driven by evidence, not guessing or not anything like that. And so that's why it's something we should always consider. And part of that process is formative assessment. And we really want to determine where a student's current level is, figuring out what their gap is to where they should be, and then creating a plan to close that gap. It's definitely underutilized, but it's very powerful. So for math, we do whiteboard practice, I do a bell work, we do exit quiz, we do Kahoot. That's something that's been very popular in the past few years. And there's other things like journaling and reflections in the parking lot. And so I think that those are really great ways to assess for learning, not of learning. Another big thing that's been coming out in the past couple of years are these things called I can statements. And that's really a students will be able to or a learning objective. It's just more in a student-friendly language. And again, this all connects back to data-driven instruction. Other types of assessment out there, so you've got all of your formative assessment. Usually you have an interim assessment. So a lot of schools are doing benchmark assessments at the quarter mark, so quarter 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then generally there's always a summative assessment. Those are your Regents exams, your any big exam at the end of a year. And so that's why we need to have the formative assessment and the interim assessment along the way, so that our kids are prepared when they get to the summative assessment to be successful. Another thing that we should always be doing is differentiation. And so you should always be designing your activities accordingly, having scaffolding. Typically, we would like a low entry point, so every learner in the room can start learning, but the activity will have a high ceiling, so that your high achieving students can take that activity and just run with it. And so you should always be looking for different activities that engage different styles of learners, especially with block scheduling for 80 minutes. You really need to break that up into chunks of about 15 or 20 minutes to kind of keep the momentum of your lesson going. And that kind of jumps into Bloom's taxonomy and depths of knowledge, which is part of any new teacher preparation program. Talking about those questions, talking about the levels of those activities that you're doing. So here's just a quick picture of our Bloom's taxonomy. Again, we're really trying to get our kiddos to the top of the pyramid. And then we have the depths of knowledge, also known as DOK levels, trying to go from 1 to a 4. Again, that 4 is when we're synthesizing, we're analyzing, we're creating. And so in my math classroom, what that looks like is students are creating math problems and then solving them, right? And so just trying to find ways to really amp up the lesson so that they meet these needs. And again, part of that differentiation really stems back to our special education. We have IEPs, or individual education programs, and our 504 plans that are law. And so yearly case conferences are always happening for every one of those kiddos. And usually a gen ed teacher is always on that committee, and parents are always invited. Our seniors have an exit meeting before they leave to make sure they have an exit strategy for when they begin college. And all teachers are notified of any accommodations. Typically, you are able to see these accommodations in whatever Power School or gradebook that you're using. Common practices for accommodations are extended testing time, or small group testing, or use of technology. I've seen large print. I've seen paper that has to be green because it better stimulates our visual learners. I mean, there's tons of different accommodations out there, and I think that it's great that we can, by providing these accommodations, then we are providing these students with greater opportunities to learn. And like I said, it definitely ties back into differentiation. You don't need to make lessons easier. You just have to scaffold and provide these accommodations. And then you should always be thinking about building your resume. So after you get your job, it's still important to develop your resume. More than likely, you'll probably teach in a couple different schools, and the one that you start in might not be your dream job. And so kind of like what I was doing, you should really get involved to whatever extent that you can. So coaching, advising, clubs, supervising detention, getting on committees. Things like committees they don't take up a lot of time, and so that's an easy thing to get involved in. You should always seek out professional development opportunities. I believe that the state of New York requires you to do it's 100 hours, I believe, in 5 years. So you already have to do that. So finding things that are interesting to you, and then join an association like I said, the AMPNIS, the Association of Mathematics Teachers of New York State. That's one that I joined, and the school that I was in covered it fully. And then I had all the access to all of their professional materials, their monthly publications, things like. I think that is a great thing to grow professionally, and to put on your resume. And it looks really good. You should always be professional. You should always be on time or early. I always say that you should dress for the job that you want. And so I'm a shirt and tie kind of a guy because I know that I'm going to be going into administration at some point. And so you should always look professional. Don't get suckered into the high school personality where, high schoolers they're a little silly sometimes. So just always remaining professional, being the professional in the room. Always carrying yourself well, supporting the others, and try to really just stand out. I think behind the scenes work doesn't go unnoticed all the time, and so even though you think no one's watching, someone is always watching. So I think that's great ways to get involved. I try my hardest just to work from 8 to 5. I try and get all my grading and planning done during planning periods or a study hall. That's a great time. I front load my work, so I make everything ahead of time, and then it lasts for 2 or 3 weeks, so I don't have to make copies consistently, and they have everything they need. Sometimes I work in the mornings on the weekends if I have to, update my website or something like that. But I think it's really important to just stay healthy, right? Getting your sleep, your exercise, making sure you're eating your vegetables, you're relaxing. I think that that's really important. And that kind of plays into your sick and personal days. You typically get anywhere between 7 and 12 of these throughout the year. And so I think that it's important to use them when you need them. I don't think it's something you should hold on to, and maybe for some people, yes, that's important in case you have an emergency or something like that. But I think it's important to take a Friday every once in a while and take that 3-day weekend because teaching is very draining, and you're going to need that time to recharge the batteries. Again, creating supports, because this all leads to half the teachers leave education in the first 5 years. And so if you can take some of these tips with you, you can be the other 50%, and be in this great world of education. So a little bit just about certification. You get an initial teaching certificate when you graduate from Oswego. You have a 5-year time period to get your master's and teach for 3 years in order to be professionally certified. Again, I think that it was great for me personally to get right into grad school right after undergrad, but that's personal choice. You got to get yourself 100 PD hours every 5 years. And so, that's really not too bad when the school requires you to do stuff anyway. That should add up pretty quick. And then you should always think about how do you want to grow professionally in your own education? Are you going to be a lifer and teach for the next 30 years? Do you want to be a director? Do you want to be a principal? Do you want to get your doctorate? So I think that it's always important to always have a 5 and a 10-year plan in the back of your mind, so that you know where you're going. And so that's it for me for today. If you have any questions or comments, I have my email here. I'd be more than happy to chat with people on the phone as well. There's a lot more that goes into teaching than I put in this PowerPoint. And so, again, I just appreciate everyone taking the time, and I'll turn it back over to Stephanie.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Zach, for sharing this great information. And thank you all for tuning in. For more information about these webinars and all the great programs and benefits available to our alumni, or if you are interested in becoming more involved with the Oswego Alumni Association, please feel free to head over to our website at alumni.oswego.edu to get that information. And we hope to connect with you all again soon.